Hello everyone, if this is your first talk with us today, then welcome to the Sales Enablement Festival. And for those of you who've already been tuning in to our selection of talks, welcome back. We have so much more amazing content heading your way, but before we get back into it, we just want to take this moment to thank all our amazing sponsors and partners for bringing this virtual festival to life. We also want to thank you, our attendees, for joining us today. If you're enjoying the content from the festival, be sure to check out the SEC membership plans. It's here where you can gain access to exclusive content, research and frameworks, and discounts to things like our brand new workshop series and so much more. You can find more information about this over on the Sales Enablement Collective website. Don't forget to have your questions ready for the live Q&A at the end of this talk, as you'll have the chance to put them to the experts themselves. That's everything from me, so all that's left to do is sit back and enjoy this next talk. Hello everyone, and yes, welcome back to this next talk. This talk is hosted by Nick Salas, who is the Head of Sales Readiness at MindTickle, and he's going to talk to you all about how to develop an ideal rep profile to drive continuous excellence. So Nick, over to you.
All right. Hey guys, thanks to everybody for joining today. As he said, my name is Nick Salas. I'm the Head of Sales Readiness at MindTickle. Prior to my role here, I was Director of Sales Enablement at a company called Workfront, who was recently acquired by Adobe. And prior to that, I actually held quota-carrying sales roles and have found that experience to be really helpful in my role in enablement. So I'm happy to join this group today to speak a little bit more about what an ideal rep profile means and how to start kind of building a framework to identify key areas to build on as you think about your overall enablement strategy in building this, what we've coined as ideal rep profile. So please reach out to me to connect on LinkedIn. I love hearing ideas from fellow practitioners and making more connections in our space. And again, thanks for joining the session. Really appreciate it. So let's go ahead and jump into it here. So. Before we get into the specifics of what, kind of identifying the ideal rep profile and what that really means, I kind of want to lay the groundwork for this around why this concept is so compelling for us enablement professionals. So when you look at the convergence between, sales reps and sales leaders, you can see the huge gap that they believe exists in their ability to build kind of that culture of readiness and learning. And as you can see here, 75% of employees say that their existing training doesn't really have an impact on performance. And the sales leaders are finding significant gaps in that same training. And this is what we kind of refer to as the crisis of enterprise readiness, that true readiness, which we're going to talk about today. And it's really creating a need for us in enablement, to kind of take a step back, analyze our programs to identify those areas where we can start making a little bit more of an impact. So as it relates to sales, this new Hines report out of 250 sales leaders who were polled show us that, hitting quota is obviously a real challenge. We're going to speak today about how us in enablement, how we can start making a difference in closing the gap between sales readiness and quota achievement. So in my opinion, we should always be looking at that KPI as an indicator of the quality of our programs, not to say that we're driving the number, but, we can have a heavy hand in influencing the direction of the number in terms of overall achievement. So, we're all familiar with the 80-20 rule probably, right? Where 80% of the revenue is being closed by 20% of the sales force. And I'm sure we can all agree that that's no longer sustainable. And with accountability being laid so heavy on sales teams to perform and be message ready all the time, it's imperative that us in enablement, that we take a more heavy-handed role in ensuring that those percentages are more evenly distributed. What's really kind of painful is that this 80-20 has even started to become hardwired into some hiring plans. CFOs are doing financial planning around it. The problem is that 20% we've relied on for so many years, may be shrinking. And, as you can see here, there's, the three readiness issues that are impacting the stats that we found. is, the first here is the increase in ramp time. And this is caused in large part by, by complexity of product or market changes that a lot of the companies face. And any of us who enable against, really complex product sets, we kind of understand that pain. And, today the average ramp time for a rep to reach productivity is almost 11 months, which is crazy. The second here you can see is the decrease in tenure, with the average tenure of reps hovering at right around 18 months. And this is in large part due to competitive markets or even a lack of incentive to stay for a long time. And reps tend to, and I'm sure we've all seen this, where reps tend to move on after they finally get settled in. And, that's obviously really disheartening for us to see in enablement. And the third here that I mentioned is the drop in performance. So from 2011 to 2019, quota attainment per rep fell from 63% to 43%. So this crisis, this readiness crisis, as it relates to CROs and sales reps, is real and becoming more apparent, which is why we as enablers need to be really crystal clear in our charters into what it means to be ready and how we're going to impact a change in the current direction. So before we start getting into kind of some of the more specifics of what this ideal rep profile is, I wanted to lay this groundwork so that we understand, so that we can all kind of get a framework for why we're doing this. So let's take a look at how we define readiness as we jump into kind of this next section. So, if we look at this definition, how do we even define sales readiness? The definition that we've come up with here at MindTickle is that sales readiness is a continuous state of excellence to grow revenue by using a suite of tools and processes to increase knowledge, enhance performance, and adapt to change. So my favorite part of this definition is around growing revenue portion. I think probably just by nature of having been a sales rep before, I always tend to think in revenue, growing revenue, carrying quotas. For us in sales enablement, our kind of our North Star is always being able to correlate our efforts and our programs towards productivity, towards competency progression, and ultimately towards revenue contribution. And, although we're not driving the number, like I mentioned earlier, we can have a major impact in influencing the number through our enablement efforts and by taking kind of a more data-driven approach to gathering some of these metrics. So if we look at this model of readiness based on our definition, I really like this model because it kind of puts everything into a more visual perspective. Based on our definition of readiness, we see that defining excellence is the first step to building your framework. You can see that there's the number one in orange. So this is what we're going to focus on today, which I believe is the cornerstone and the foundation to the other areas here around building knowledge, aligning content, analyzing performance, and optimizing behavior. So when we think about each of these areas, each one of these could easily justify an entire session of their own. Aligning content for content management and content in context, for example, or optimizing behavior through scalable coaching. For the sake of this presentation, we're here focused on number one, which is defining excellence. So what does that mean, and how can we start to do it? This excellence, this ability to define excellence is what I've been referring to as the ideal rep profile, and it'll drive all the other areas of your framework for readiness. And you'll see that once we have the groundwork set for what good looks like, once we're able to define what that excellence looks like, we can start to build our programs around it. So we're going to discuss competencies, skills, and behaviors. So I thought it'd be helpful to define how I tend to look at the differences. They are so closely related, but when we think about building a scalable rep profile, you'll want to identify where you are building programs against at least these three areas. So you can see here in terms of competencies, I kind of define those as the different levels of knowledge that will predict behavior, skills as more learned abilities to get the job done, and then behaviors as kind of execution of the skills, abilities, and knowledge. But I would love to hear what your definitions are for these and how you use them to build your enablement programs, because I know they tend to vary amongst companies and industries. But the bottom line here is that as practitioners, it's important that we delineate what we're going to enable against. So what is our program? What are our programs focused on? In the context of building, this ideal rep profile, it should be a combination or a mix of these areas that you and your leaders want to focus on, and that your team actually has the resources to build programs against. That's important too. So now that we have some groundwork laid and definitions clarified, let's talk about this kind of true sales readiness as we're defining it. So what do you guys think? I mean, is true sales readiness, is it a dream state? Or is this something that can revenue orgs really achieve it? Is this attainable? Can we move away from completion and adoption and into the ability for enablement and readiness teams to truly predict when a sales rep or a sales team is truly message ready? Build programs against that, start measuring against it to repeat success. Additionally, how can we start as enablers to build KPIs that start showing correlation with our efforts to the productivity and the revenue of the field? A lot of true sales readiness, what we're defining here as true sales readiness, starts with simply defining what it means. What does it mean to you? And that's where we're talking about in defining excellence. In the context of our topic today, what does it mean to build true readiness around an ideal rep profile? So, the ability to achieve this dream state, it shouldn't be unattainable. It should be viewed as a reality, as something that we as an enablement function can help drive and lead the company's perspective on. So let's take a look at the basic anatomy of a deal as we start to think about building out this profile. So we know that every deal has two sides, right? The seller and the buyer. And your marketing team has probably spent a lot of time identifying what your ICP looks like, your ideal customer profile, and all the characteristics that go hand in hand with where they want you to spend your time, or where they want their sellers to spend their time. So we can see things here that we think about when building out that profile, like industry, geography, number of employees, pain points, etc. But as I kind of call out in this slide, what about our sellers? So we spend so much time thinking about our buyers, which is obviously very important. But I argue in enablement, we should spend the same amount of time thinking about our sellers and our ideal rep profile. When we think about ICP, the ideal customer profile, the amount of research we put into it ensures that we're spending the right amount of time, the right amount of money, the right amount of effort to grow our revenue. And in enablement and sales management, it's the same thought process, right? How do we spend our time and effort to ensure that we're focusing our resources on activities that will bring maximum return for our field sellers? So these questions that you start to kind of have a better answer set when we can look at the ideal rep profile through the similar lens that we do with our customers. So instead of ICP, it turns into a conversation around IRP. So building out a framework that includes a set of skills as shown here, but like I mentioned earlier, competencies, behavioral strategies, attributes, metrics, etc., that you as an enablement team or enablement practitioner can really start building and driving the perspective on as kind of the gold standard, or what we're calling the ideal rep profile. So in terms of, if we look at this through the lens of command of the message, I think it's important to kind of take a look at some of the negative consequences, right, of not doing this. What does it look like if we don't spend time to identify what your ideal rep profile looks like? And the first thing that I want to call out here that I think is important is training for the sake of training. And this is what I call compliance, check the box training. No sales manager wants their team on those incomplete lists. So 72.5% of stakeholders, as it says here, don't feel like their enablement initiatives meet or exceed expectations. They're doing it just for the sake of checking off the box. Is that because there's no focus on sales rep qualities, on knowledge, capabilities within the enablement? I think it's heavily based on a strategy that maybe focuses too much on that episodic, one-time, compliance-driven training that's not necessarily created to drive change, which it could be if there was more emphasis placed on driving to ideal rep profile qualities. We can see here on the second bubble, when coaching is looked at as extended deal reviews, you see the output here, which includes no improvements in rep performance. And obviously this is a huge negative consequence, to not building out that ideal rep profile. And as you can see here also in this last bubble, overall quota attainment has fallen since 2013. And I think we can all agree that there's a strong why here and a compelling event within our own sales enablement teams to change how we approach our programs. And that starts with defining excellence and defining your ideal rep profile. So if we take it another step back and kind of look at the benefits, so instead of the negative consequences, we start to look at it through the lens of what the benefits are. They're going to vary by role, but when you think about the seller, if you put yourself in the shoes of a seller, knowing what good looks like is an important component to what we do in enablement. We would never introduce a new product line and pitch deck to our field sellers without showing them what a good pitch looks like against that new product line, right? So this concept really helps drive success for your sellers. They can see what they need to track towards to hit ultimate productivity and be field ready. For sales leaders, the benefits of having a well-defined ideal rep profile, include, obviously, like we mentioned earlier, coaching topics, identifying gaps, remediation techniques. It brings that one-on-one meeting to a state where the manager is able to help their seller become better at what they do by having kind of a model to point them back to. And lastly, for us in sales enablement, we benefit because now we have a roadmap of content that we can prioritize, and we can work with sales leadership to prioritize this content and drive our program towards it. So the benefits, the benefits are all around. So we should start thinking about that. So in terms of getting started with your profile, so let's get a little bit tactical here. So think about the skills, the competencies, and the behaviors that are agreed upon as ideal for your team to have. One important thing here that I want to call out is that not every area will bear the same weight. So keep in mind that in some industries and situations, it's more mission critical that reps, for example, have deep product knowledge, maybe over competitive knowledge, or even some behaviors or skills may hold more weight in terms of prioritization. So make sure that when you're setting your ideal rep profile, that there's consensus with sales leaders on what success should look like and where you should spend more time prioritizing more important target areas. This is kind of what I see as the first stepping stone to creating your ideal rep profile, is to start listing out, and you could even do it, in columns or whatever, but skills, behaviors, competencies, attributes, metrics, whatever your organization deems as most important to categorize. In other words, what do we want our sellers to know? What do we want them to do? How do we want that translated into prospect-facing activities? And how much importance or how much weight do we want to give to those different areas? It's a good first step there. Once you have identified and you have consensus on all of this and you've built out your framework, the reinforcement of it obviously is critical. So this is why coaching is such a big component to the ideal rep profile, because it's not just enough to set it and kind of leave it alone. In enablement, our efforts should go really far in this IRP, but those efforts are extended even further when the managers are supporting to it and coaching to it. So, and you can categorize the level of your rep profile and color code it however you want to track the progression, but make it obvious what good looks like. Don't let the sellers wonder. Make it crystal clear. I also want to add here, and I think it's kind of obvious, but creating an ideal rep profile should not have a punitive kind of underlaying to it. If you're low in one area that holds a lot of weight, you're automatically going on plan. Like we don't want to start building that culture, but it should be more of an opportunity to have better, more meaningful coaching sessions. And have an opportunity to work with the sales enablement team on more tailored and customized programs that are ultimately going to help your sales reps succeed. So when you're thinking about what to include in your ideal rep profile, we talked a little bit about this already, but you should think about using a combination of feedback from your reps, from your tenured reps, from your call recordings, from your quota exceeding field sellers, and from the kind of dream state that sales managers want to replicate on their team. So don't build this on your own. This shouldn't be a sales enablement only activity. This should have a lot of involvement with it. Maybe even product marketing has a hand in this too. But most sales organizations have standards that are broadly used across all industries. But the more specific you can make it to your sales process, the easier it will be for your end customer, for your sellers and your sales managers to understand what he or she needs to know to kind of hit that ideal state. So it's not enough to just show them what it is, but we also need to show them kind of a path to how they can achieve that. And it's a journey, right? I mean, we shouldn't position this as a quarterly activity that, after taking a handful of programs within the quarter, that all of your field sellers are going to be at the ideal rep profile state. So it's a constant journey of learning and iterating, prioritizing what your business is trying to achieve within a given quarter, and then aligning your skills, your attributes, competencies, etc., towards those objectives once you have gained that consensus that you need. So as mentioned earlier, the agreed upon categories need to be identified and written out, right? That's the first step, is just putting it on paper. So that way it'll start to come to life. You can begin to categorize by importance, what programs the enablement team can start thinking about to fill some of the ideal rep profile gaps. Each of these example categories that I'm showing here could, in theory, justify an entire enablement program, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys are skimming the list right now, probably thinking about like things that you've done in the past, programs you put together in the past against some of these. But it's important, like I mentioned earlier, to prioritize these so you know where to spend your time. Additionally, I don't spend much time in this presentation talking about baselining these with your existing team, but it's important that you get a sense. We shouldn't think about this just from a new hire perspective, but you should be getting a sense from your existing field sellers and your frontline managers on where they stand with each category. You can then start to kind of calculate totals, see where scores are low, present a plan of action to leadership, get agreement on tailored and customized enablement programs, and kind of build that into your process. But this ideal rep profile revolves heavily around prioritization for leadership that we in enablement will help drive and support. So once you have those on paper, you can use a spreadsheet or ideally a sales enablement platform to build those in. You can build those in as tags and start tracking the progression of the programs that you're building against each category. And we all know that in enablement, the data kind of rules. So when you can start to show the effect of your enablement against that ideal rep profile, it becomes a lot more impactful, actionable, something that sales leaders will take note of. And this has a dual purpose too, because we can start looking at how impactful are our enablement programs in the context of driving the ideal rep profile. And we can start asking ourselves, like, are these enablement programs, the ones that we're spending so much time on, are they meeting the expected outcomes to drive towards ideal rep profile qualities, and can we quantify their impact? So building this profile, aligning your content to it will take you away from that compliance and episodic driven strategy of enablement that we talked about. It'll drive you towards true readiness. The differences I list here on this slide are all areas to think about when implementing a true readiness program that aligns with your ideal rep profile. And you can see it there on top. Again, it's shifting the enablement away from adoption into a state of continuous, scalable, and data-driven enablement. Again, you can see where it falls here in my prioritization. It should be the first step in creating your readiness program. You can start to combine any work you've already done with competency matrices, combine that with other attributes you like to highlight in your IRP, and come up with that gold standard. And in doing so, you'll put yourself on a journey away from this traditional thinking of enablement into this state of, kind of continuous excellence. So I want to ask you a question that you can take back to your enablement teams and sales leaders, which is, how would you align your org to the ideal rep profile? Can consensus start building around the skills, competencies, and behaviors and start to be built into your programs with more purpose? The most important part in all of this, in my opinion, is including your end customer, because at the end of all this, your sales managers are accountable for the success of their teams. So it's important to get that alignment. But ask yourself, how can you begin to align your sales department with ideal rep profile qualities, and what do you need to put in place for this to be successful? One template that I want to reference here as you begin building this, to drive the IRP, is by attributes, behaviors, and metrics. So same theory, just different drivers you can point towards. Again, these will change by industry and product offering, but should generally cover what is defined as your ideal rep profile. So I defined each area under attributes, behaviors, and metrics. So hopefully you can think about kind of how to separate them in your mind. But the great part about building this out is that you can begin to see how impactful our role in sales enablement can be here. Think of all the possibilities of program topics that can help drive, for example, the qualities that must be present in each and every seller, the activities that you see repeatedly in each rep, and the metrics that will help the manager coach more effectively. And finally, helping drive justification towards your role in enablement on the metrics side. So to kind of wrap, you can start moving towards the other areas of enablement success and driving programs to align with what excellence has been defined as in your org. After a successful implementation and completion of this ideal rep profile. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of how you can begin to define excellence and identify that ideal rep profile. So thank you. Appreciate your guys' time.
Awesome. Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to present. We do have time just for a few questions, and there is one just down here that says, how do you measure value articulation or competitor knowledge and track change over time?
Can I see that question, or do I have access?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's in the chat column. It's from Delane.
Okay. I can't see that chat. Can you repeat that? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. I think it's a question anyway. It says, how do you measure value articulation or competitor knowledge and track change over time?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So, what we found to be really successful in our org is scenario-based enablement. So we have conversational intelligence, which is really helpful with this, but you can start extracting actual scenarios that your sales reps are in, building enablement around that, and then giving them options to choose from. Some being ideal, some being not so ideal, and then you reinforce those scenarios over time. And if you have a proper sales enablement platform that can that has or any type of platform that really allows for for role playing or for for being able to track competencies, you can tag, you can use that almost as like a guiding tag against competitive knowledge, build those scenarios against it, and then kind of see how that tracks over time. That's how we do it anyways.
Awesome. Nice. Yeah, great answer. I'm sure that answers Delaine's question. Yeah, that does in fact bring us to time. So if anyone does have any more questions for Nick, please feel free to reach out to him over on LinkedIn, and I'm sure that he'll be more than happy to answer any questions there. With that said, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to present. And to everyone that tuned in, thank you, and we'll see you all very soon.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.